What if a curse meant to destroy you actually became your path to liberation? In the vast tapestry of Hindu mythology, few stories illuminate this paradox as powerfully as the tale of King Parikshit, whose destined death by snake bite transformed into humanity's greatest spiritual gift. Our story begins in the aftermath of the Great Kurukshetra War. The world stands at the threshold of Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness. Into this transitional moment is born Parikshit, grandson of the mighty Arjuna and great-grandson of the Pandavas. His very birth carries divine significance, for he was saved in his mother's womb by Krishna himself when Ashwathama's deadly Brahmastra threatened to end the Pandava lineage forever. Parikshit grows to become a righteous king, embodying the highest ideals of Dharma. He rules with wisdom and compassion, protecting his subjects like a father protects his children. The kingdom of Hastinapur flourishes under his benevolent reign. Yet destiny, that inexorable force that governs even the mightiest, has already begun weaving the threads of his fate. The pivotal moment arrives during one of Parikshit's hunting expeditions. Tired and thirsty after a long chase, the king approaches the hermitage of the great sage Shamaka. The sage sits in deep meditation, so absorbed in divine contemplation that he doesn't acknowledge the king's presence. In Hindu tradition, failing to honor a visiting king, especially one as righteous as Parikshit, constitutes a grave breach of protocol. Here we witness a crucial moment where pride clouds wisdom. Feeling insulted and perhaps influenced by the creeping effects of Kali Yuga, Parikshit commits an act that will seal his fate. He picks up a dead snake and places it around the neck of the meditating sage. This seemingly small act of disrespect sets in motion a chain of events that will reshape the spiritual landscape of humanity. When Shamaka emerges from his meditation and discovers the dead snake, he remains calm, understanding the king's momentary lapse. However, his young son Shringi, filled with righteous anger at this insult to his father, utters a terrible curse. He declares that within 7 days, the king who dared to humiliate his father will die from the bite of Takshaka, the king of serpents. Upon learning of his son's curse, Shamaka feels deep remorse. He immediately sends word to Parikshit warning him of the impending doom. The sage knows that while his son's anger was justified, the curse was disproportionate to the offense. This moment teaches us about the awesome power of words, especially those spoken in anger by those with spiritual attainment. Parikshit receives the news with remarkable equanimity. Rather than raging against fate or desperately seeking ways to avoid death, he demonstrates the wisdom of a true king. He understands that this curse might be divine providence, offering him an opportunity for spiritual elevation. He renounces his throne, hands over the kingdom to his son, and seeks the banks of the sacred Ganges to prepare for death through spiritual practice. On the banks of the holy river, an extraordinary assembly gathers. Sages, saints, and spiritual seekers from across the land come to witness the king's final days. Among them arrives the young sage Shuka, son of the great Vyasa, compiler of the Vedas. Shuka, though appearing as a 16-year-old youth, possesses the highest spiritual realization. In these 7 days, as Parikshit awaits his destined death, something miraculous unfolds. Sage Shuka begins narrating the Bhagavata Purana, the supreme scripture devoted to Lord Vishnu and his incarnations. For 7 consecutive days and nights, Parikshit listens with complete devotion to stories of Krishna's divine play, his teachings, and the path of pure devotion. This narration transforms Parikshit's approaching death from a curse into the greatest blessing. Through Shuka's words, the king experiences complete spiritual awakening. He realizes his true nature as an eternal soul, beyond the temporary body that must face death. The stories of Krishna's love and compassion fill his heart with divine devotion, preparing him for the ultimate journey. On the seventh day, as prophesied, Takshaka arrives to fulfill the curse. But by this time, Parikshit has transcended all fear of death. Filled with Krishna consciousness and divine love, he welcomes his fate with perfect peace. The serpent's bite becomes not an end but a doorway to liberation. Parikshit's story teaches us profound truths about karma, destiny, and spiritual transformation. His momentary pride led to a curse, yet that very curse became his salvation. Through devotion and surrender, what appeared as punishment became the greatest gift. His death gave birth to the Bhagavata Purana, blessing countless generations with spiritual wisdom. Today, we can learn from Parikshit's example that our greatest challenges often carry hidden blessings, and that facing adversity with devotion and wisdom can transform even curses into pathways to the divine.